Welcome to the Hire Yourself podcast. If you're ready to take control of your destiny, build wealth, and live life on your own terms, this is the place for you. Each week, Nat and I will talk about business, franchising, and personal growth to help make you more successful. Good morning, Nat.
Good morning, Pete.
Oh, I'm pumped up.
As always, I'm completely surprised.
You're surprised, right?
Yeah.
So I'm on this adventure to be a snowbird, right?
Okay.
And we have some very good friends down here in Marco Island, and they say, we want you to come out and have an adventure with us. I said, okay, wait a minute. What adventure are you talking about? And they go, we want to rent a boat for the day, and we're going to take you to this national preserve. It's 10,000 Island Preserve. All right. So we're going to rent a pontoon boat. They got one of those boat clubs, so they're going to do that. Right.
Right.
So I said, okay, I love boating. Right. So we do this last week. Right. And we get in a little pontoon boat, and then they proceed to go out into the ocean. Now, pontoon boats aren't for oceans, but they said we're following the shoreline, but we're going fast. And they said we're going to the 10,000 Island, and it's a preserve, and they are the largest mangrove forest. So this is a forest of kind of like trees and islands and stuff like that. It's the start of the Everglades. Right?
Oh wow, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, right. And so we're going, and we finally kind of turn in, and you kind of navigate through these little islands, right? And all I'm thinking about is, I don't know how we're going to get back, right? Because it's these little teeny channels and stuff, and it's not like you could go walk onto these islands and stuff like that. I mean, it looks like, well, it's the Everglades, right? So it doesn't look like fun. So we're going, and it's beautiful in its own way. But I start thinking about, if this boat breaks down and it gets dark, there's no lights. I mean, it is completely, I guarantee you that the boat didn't have a spotlight. Like, you're screwed if this thing goes down.
You're getting some anxiety, it sounds like.
I was, right? Because I'm used to boating, but this is a whole different thing, right?
Right.
So as we're going through all this kind of stuff, and I'm worried about all this stuff, he goes, you know what? I brought my iPad, and I've got the nav going here, but he goes, in the days before, when they didn't have navigation, people would go into here and they would not come back out. They couldn't find them. They would just disappear forever.
Oh, that's helpful.
Yeah, right. So I'm thinking to myself, oh, that's not so good. I'm in these groves, and it is the Everglades, the start of the Everglades, and there's all kinds of, I would say, predators in the Everglades. So I'm thinking to myself, alligators, big ass snakes, and the boat actually had, believe it or not, engine problems. So I'm doing all this kind of stuff. And as I'm going through this, I'm thinking to myself, I hope this isn't my last trip, right? My last adventure as a snowbird. But we had fun, and thanks to the nav system, we got ourselves out of there and things like that. And I was thinking, as I was going through this adventure, that as we were navigating through these 10,000 islands and stuff like that, and it's very easy to get lost, I could translate that to franchising. You see, there are over 4,000 franchise companies out there today. And as you try to navigate through trying to find the right one, you can get lost.
Yeah. That's actually an interesting comparison. I think that's actually a pretty good one.
Yeah, it came from fear.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, so many people, they get overwhelmed, because if you look at the 10,000 islands, or you think about 4,000 franchise concepts, how do you navigate through that? Yeah. And I think about our trip that we went through the Mangrove, and it was literally, they were the guide. They kind of knew where they were going, thank goodness. But they also had the GPS to make sure that we were on point. And that's not any different as we explore franchises. You got your franchise consultant, what we do, right? We're the guide. We've been through the grove or through the process, right? And we have the GPS, which is the franchise investigation procedures, the process that you go through to make sure that you find the right franchise.
Yeah, every once in a while I get connected with somebody that, I feel like looking at franchises is like multi-year hobby. Like 3 years later, they're kind of staggering out of the Mangroves. They're like, I've been looking at all these franchises. I need help.
Right.
It's easy to get lost in there and, be looking at businesses and franchises for years and years and years, but it's
Yeah.
just like, it's exhausting. And, eventually you're going to get all sunburned and dehydrated and,
Yeah.
kind of
Right.
tired.
Or not, or eaten by something, right?
Yeah.
But it's true. Like I'll ask people, they'll say, "Oh, I've looked at all these franchises over the years." I said, "Well, why haven't you invested one?" And they're like, "Well, we haven't found the right one." And I said, "Okay, right." So that's the benefit of using a franchise consultant, right? Is they're
Yeah.
kind of that guide. They've got the GPS, the system. So let's talk a little bit about some of the advantages to using a franchise consultant to find a franchise. So what would be the first thing you'd say as we think about a franchise consultant helping somebody? What's the first advantage?
Um, I think it's always helpful to get advice from somebody that's kind of been there down the path before you. So from somebody that's experienced and been around the block a few times. Um, that's, I guess, what comes to my mind. That's why a lot of people hire coaches, regardless of what their industry or their business or their profession is. It's like, and with us, what we do is actually a free service, ironically.
Okay.
So that's even better.
All right, so let's start with number one. It's a free service, right? So that's the first one, is that, hey, you don't pay anything, so you got your guide for free from the standpoint, and they're going to add real value. Number two is, I think I heard you say, is that, hey, listen, it's about this. Somebody has been through the process before. They've been through the Grove. They've been through all this kind of stuff, so they can teach you the steps or the processes you're going to need to evaluate the franchises. Did I
Yeah,
get that right?
totally. Yep.
Right. What would be the third advantage you think about as you use a franchise consultant? What would be the third one you could use?
The I guess somebody that has knowledge about franchises or different franchises. Franchising is very dynamic. There's always up and coming franchises. People, they always want to know what's new, what's hot. So I think that's important, but then also you need to kind of fall back on the system or the process to try to analyze these opportunities too.
Yeah, right. So they have experience with it. So when we're going through the mangrove, they had experience going through it. So they knew we don't get off that boat and go play around in the trees, right? And the same thing here is that they know the franchise systems. They know the good ones. They know the ones that maybe aren't as good from that standpoint, or the ones that might be a little bit more dangerous from that standpoint, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then as we talk about the franchise consultant, what would be another thing, a benefit of a franchise consultant?
I think just knowing the questions to ask is always helpful. I mean, that's always, knowing the right questions to ask that helps you get the answers that you want. So, just kind of as you're investigating, asking the right questions and doing the proper research. I think the other thing that kind of pops to my mind too is just, franchising is kind of its own niche. I mean, it definitely is its own niche. And so there's like specialized attorneys or specialized lending programs. There's all kinds of like specialized resources that I think is super helpful to kind of get connected with people that understand franchising, and you don't have to get them up to speed all the time.
Yeah. So what I heard you say is that number one is that from a standpoint of the investigation, somebody can be there by your side, kind of
Mm-hmm.
telling you things to look for, questions to ask, all that kind of stuff. So it's taking that process and then educating you as you go through the process, the things that you need to be looking at or be concerned about. So, and then I think what I also heard you say is that a benefit of a franchise consultant is when you look to invest in a franchise, is the resources they can provide. For example, funding
Totally.
companies, right? The
Mm-hmm.
attorneys from that standpoint. So people that can kind of help you, financial services companies that can help you put together the pro forma. So all those kind of great resources, a franchise consultant can get connected with them so that you're safe, right?
Right.
Like you're on the boat, the pontoon, I'm going through the groves. It's nice to know that I got life jackets, right? I got a radio to call for help, right? I know
Exactly.
what the right question to ask is, how the heck are you going to get me out of here before it gets dark, right? So
Yeah.
that's what a franchise consultant. And then I think of one more. And when I think of a franchise consultant, they're there when you have that fear,
Yeah.
right? Right. And
Fear
you
and
got to make
anxiety.
that. Yeah,
That'll
right.
get you
You
every
got
time.
you have to make the decision to invest your hard-earned savings into that business. And that creates fear and anxiety. And I did that. I know I had that when I invested in my first franchise. I know you did too. And I was thinking about going through the mangrove. I got all this fear, right? And they're helping me get through that fear. Pete, we're not going to die here. We're going to, we're not going to get stuck out here, and you're not going to get eaten by an alligator or a python or anything else like that.
On that boat ride, were you ever kind of at the point where you looked back and you couldn't really tell where you came from?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you were weaving through these groves. I mean, it was, and the deal is that when I tell you there's nothing out there, I mean, there's no buildings, there's no lights, and even they had some channel markers. But the deal was is that they weren't even illuminated. So all I'm thinking about is that if something happens, this thing breaks down, you are screwed because they couldn't get to you fast enough, right? Right.
Did you see other people putting around out there?
Yeah, we saw a few other boats, but I just I don't know. It was a whole different thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never been to something like that. It's not, it does sound kind of interesting, but also kind of scary. Like you definitely would want to have a guide or somebody that knows what they're doing, and probably a flare gun.
Well, flare gun, radio, all that kind of stuff, and it's not only that, but you have tides.
Yeah.
So when you go in and come out makes a difference, right? I would have no idea about that because I've never really dealt with tides in terms of boating from that point. So, and of course the boat, and I told you we had engine issues. That's true. And we also, our depth finder didn't work on our boat. So we're going on this journey, going through all this kind of stuff. I'm like, wait a minute here, So, right. And because I don't think even you could use your cell phone in some of those areas. I suspect not. So
yeah, I mean, I definitely, when I ride a boat, I feel a little more secure having that depth finder. So that I wouldn't have been very happy about that.
Yeah, right. So, well, yeah, and the engine started shaking when we got to a certain speed. It's just so. Anyways,
the good news is that you made it. You lived to tell the story, and you made it to do another podcast.
Absolutely right. So again, you don't want to get lost in a mangrove. Right. And you don't want to get lost when you're exploring franchises. So we always want to use a franchise consultant, have that guide, have that GPS, that system, and go find something that works for you.
Thanks for listening to the Hire Yourself podcast. For more resources, check out our website at hireyourself.com. And remember to subscribe to this podcast to receive each episode. Please leave us a rating, and we'd love to hear your feedback or suggestions for topics.